Howdy, howdy. Devil here, and welcome to a set of quick tests where we're going to look at Dawi mass. And that is one of the areas in the game where the dwarfs actually have a massive advantage, pun intended, because dwarf units have very good mass all around, and you can use that to your advantage in your games by understanding exactly which units have the most mass and how to optimize the mass a unit has. Now, I'm going to test against the Noble on a Chariot. Chariots are really strong against the Dawi all around, just so you can kind of see how the difference in the unit's mass and their formations work. So first I want to go and look at miners. Miners are actually not a bad stand-in for an anti-large unit because they do have armor piercing, and even though they have very low melee attack, most cavalry and chariots have very low melee defense. Like this chariot only has 24 melee defense. Now I know it's going to get up to 36 once its martial prowess is going, but that's generally the case, that cav and chariots and such have pretty low melee defense because they have massive charge bonuses and they're meant for cycle charging. So I'll just go and show sort of some of the ways you can maximize the mass of your unit in an engagement, and one thing that you can use miners for, particularly against chariots. So just a fun test that I was doing. So if we look here, if we just go sort of normally how you stretch out your units, they're about 3 deep, and we'll just go and charge so you can kind of see what this Noble on a Chariot is going to do to these units. It essentially just runs through them, hardly even slows down. It's going to turn around. Well, usually he just keeps going back and forth through the miners over and over, and the miners don't get any damage in. But you can see he went through the miners very, very easily. Now, one of the things that miners are kind of useful for is, especially if a lot of times you bring miners with blasting charges, etc., is to use them after you get your blasting charges off, or use your just basic miners to muck things up in your center so you can keep your ranged units like trollhammer torpedoes and rangers or quarrelers or cannons online. And the way you can do this is by actually setting up your units so that you're going to be 6 deep. Now 6 deep is the maximum multiplier to make your mass work. So if we start here, we're 6 deep. You're going to see with 3 deep, this thing just went right through the miners. Now it ends up getting stuffed and stops on the first charge. And then the miners can sort of go to work, and even if they can't go to work, now the person who's running this chariot's going to have to be clicking, spam clicking to get him out or to pull him through. It's going to take a lot of extra micro, and you can hold that noble still for just a little while. And so just to by way of comparison, in that battle, I want to show you what lower mass units look like against that chariot and why the dwarf advantage in mass is so strong. So I'm just going to go grab some high elves here, and we'll grab Swordmasters of Hoeth. So miners have 150 mass, dwarf warriors have 150 mass, longbeards have 200 mass, and ironbreakers have 250. Swordmasters of Hoeth only have 100. So you'll see the difference even if you maximize their formation. So let's say we maximize their formation. They are now, they're 6 deep there. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. So we'll get them to go after that chariot, and you're going to see what happens. Chariot just goes right through them, and then it can sort of just continue going through them again and again. And it gets stuck here, but I mean, if you were spam clicking, you'd be able to make it go through those Swordmasters of Hoeth quite easily. So we'll go and look at a couple more units just for fun, so you can see the difference between longbeards and ironbreakers. So we're going to grab some longbeards, and this is why just the mass of Dawi units is why it's hard for a lot of factions to bring cav effectively against the dwarfs, because they do get mucked up against a lot of dwarf units. So we'll just string them out so you can see the difference between strung out and 3 deep. And we're not taking advantage of their charge defense against large or anything like that. And you can see they almost stopped that noble just 3 deep. And he's going to come back around and start doing what nobles do. Are they going to stop him? Yeah, they stop him on the second charge. So we'll concede defeat. And we're going to rematch and just show what the difference is with 6 deep formation, where you get the multiplier against the multiplier for formation depth. The max is out at 6. Okay, so we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. Right here. And we'll see the difference. You can see, boom, stops right in the middle. And you can see the difference between the dwarf warriors and even and especially the swordmasters of the Hoeth, where the extra mass the longbirds have at 200 makes a really, really big difference in their ability to stop something in its tracks. And, you know, this is not as significant against really, really big stuff like mammoths or stuff like that. I think they have a bit of a different mechanic for how they wander through things. That's why it's so hard for even the Dawi to stop big dinos like Mazdamundi on Slack. But anyways, I'll show, first of all, we'll show the iron breakers, and then I'm going to show a way to use that mass. Okay. Okay, let's get some iron breakers in there. And now iron breakers, you're are really, really strong in the front line in some engagements and some against some factions, partly because of their awesome mass. Okay, I just got to take off fire at will and put them in melee mode. Now nothing could stop these chariots 3 deep so far. Not quite. Not quite. Couldn't quite get that chariot stopped with 3, even at 250 mass. But it goes through the second time, and it is definitely stopping right there. And we will concede defeat and look at the 6 deep formation with the iron breakers versus the chariot. Then we're going to look at using the formation to make the best difference possible. Okay, what are we at? 7. So we'll go 6 deep. 5. Okay, there we go. That's 6 deep. Take off and get them going in melee mode. We're going to see how well they stop that chariot with iron breakers at 250 mass, 6 deep. Very, very good. You can see it stopped definitely short, sort of about the 4th row. It didn't even get the tail end all the way into the Dawi formation, and then the iron breakers can go hard. So we're going to concede defeat and take a look at different ways to use miners. And you can use this with, I would say, there's no difference. There's going to be no difference between miners and dwarf warriors in terms of mass. Really, the difference starts to come with longbeards. So if you want to go look at just for mass calculations, use longbeards, then miners, miners, then longbeards, then iron breakers. But I don't think you'd ever use iron breakers quite this way. So the strongest, I think the strongest unit that the Dawi have on their entire lineup for chariots is the Iron Drake's Trollhammer torpedoes. And I mean, these things are hard to stop as it is, but if you can slow them down, it usually only takes 2 shots from the Trollhammers to really do a number. So if you can stop them for any amount of time, you're going to do very good. So I'm going to put these back here, and I'm going to show what usually happens. So we'll get this going, and we'll get these guys going, and this thing just goes right through your front line, and then can sort of come into your Iron Drakes with Trollhammer torpedoes, which is really the thing that you want to avoid, because that's where they get a lot of their damage. So if we look at the rematch, and then we go with our 6 deep formation where we can hold back these nobles with the miners, or at least slow them down pretty significantly, we can let our chariot or iron drakes go to work. So let's make sure these guys are 6 deep. Okay. Yep. So you can see they stop them. They're just enough to stop that chariot. And I mean, if you could spam click to get through this, but it'd be pretty difficult. And what you do when you do that is you allow them to get one extra shot, and that's all they're going to need to get this noble routing. And well, it doesn't work perfectly every time in a test like this, because he's actually going to get away from the units. But really, you only need 2 shots to route a noble, and 3 will get the job done every time. You can see the 3rd set of shots is coming in, and he's actually missing. He's doing some nice juking, but that's the idea of using your miners to slow things down. And you can see even with a good formation, they're having a hard time slowing down that chariot, and they're not doing any damage to it, which is really, really frustrating, because you think they would do at least some damage, because they're getting actually absolutely wiped out by that chariot, but they don't. But it is what it is. Anyways, I just wanted to show off sort of that idea for anyone who doesn't know, in terms of how your formation can affect your mass. It's sort of like a mass multiplier by having your formation 6 deep. And the easiest way to do it with a unit like miners would just be put them into a box, and there would generally be a 6 deep or better, and you can use them to try and muck things up like chariots or even cavalry or other units. They can at least slow them down, and that's really to let your really strong units in the back line go to work. It is one way to slow them down, because it's not that hard to bring 5 miners in a lineup to kind of free up that amount of gold. What does 5 miners cost? 1,500, 16, 1725 ish. So usually you can afford to bring that in a number of lineups, or even 4 or something like that. And especially if you do have a good use for blasting charges, you can bring your 4 miners with blasting charges, get your blasting charges off, and then retreat your miners into your back line, and then put them into squares, or try to get them to help muck things up so they can't just glide through your back line at will. At least this slows them down somewhat. And if you have all your units in the back line, like your Thunders and your Iron Drakes and your cannons on guard mode, they'll keep shooting. So if you can just muck things up long enough, a few extra shots will actually get things routing. And that's, I think, a reasonable way to use miners, and a reasonable way to try and slow things down. So anyways, really quick test, just I thought for interest's sake, something I've been playing with a little bit, and it's going to be featured in a couple of my builds, particularly in my Bretonia build, which is very, very specifically to shut down cav, just to slow them down. I have a whole bunch of miners, even without blasting charges, to do that. And I do have some miners in my chaos build to try and slow down some big chaos units. I mean, it doesn't work perfectly, but it works a little bit. So you could use it. You can use it to at least make some sort of difference in terms of slowing things down, or at least cause your opponent to spam click to get their unit through, which isn't nothing. Spam clicking something stops you from microing other things, so it's not nothing. Anyways, hope you found it interesting. Would love to hear from you in the comments. And with that said, I will see you soon.